this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world.
And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Trumpet Daily. During his speech at West Point back in May, President Obama talked about America, as he said, has rarely been stronger. That's the way he sees it, and he says anyone that would challenge that assessment, his many critics and so on, that they're either misreading history or just simply engaged in partisan politics. Let me just take you back to one clip from that West Point speech.
Think about it. Our military has no peer. The odds of a direct threat against us by any nation are low and do not come close to the dangers we faced during the Cold War. Meanwhile, our economy remains the most dynamic on earth, our businesses the most innovative. So the United States is and remains the one indispensable nation. That has been true for the century past, and it will be true for the century to come.
Now, we've showed you that clip before, but it's important, I think, to go back to that because it's been a pretty familiar refrain in recent weeks, one that many of his advisors keep coming back to. We talked last week about the White House spokesman that referred to all of the tranquility that the United States has brought to the world. Just one more clip from that press conference.
I think that there have been a number of situations in which you've seen this administration intervene in a meaningful way that has substantially furthered American interests and substantially improved the tranquility of the global community.
So there's quite a lot of criticism that came in after that comment, but certainly no one in the administration backing away from it. If anything, they're taking that and running with it. I just want to show you a pretty remarkable exchange that happened this past weekend with the Secretary of State, John Kerry, and what he said on Meet the Press. This is a little bit of a longer clip, but notice what he says about America's assertiveness, America's leadership, America's strength as he perceives it to be around the world.
Secretary, before I let you go, I want you to answer critics who accuse this president of an uncertain course in his foreign policy. And it harkens back to something the president wrote in his own book, Audacity of Hope. He wrote this, critical of the Bush years: without a well-articulated strategy that the public supports and the world understands, America will lack the legitimacy and ultimately the power it needs to make the world safer than it is today. Is that the problem President Obama faces?
No. Let me tell you, what he faces maybe is a problem with a bunch of critics who want to jump to conclusions without looking at the facts. But the facts could not be more clear. The United States of America has never been more engaged in helping to lead in more places than we are now. I just came back from China, where we are engaged with the Chinese in dealing with North Korea. And you will notice since the visit last year, North Korea has been quieter. We haven't done what we want to do yet with respect to the denuclearization, but we are working on that and moving forward. With respect to Syria, we struck a deal where we got 100% of the chemical weapons out. With respect to Iraq, we are deeply involved now in the process of government formation, helping the Iraqis to be able to choose a government of unity that can reunite it. They've elected a speaker. They're about to elect a president. We believe that's moving forward. On Afghanistan, we helped strike a deal recently to help warring parties in the contest of the election to be able to come together and hold Afghanistan together. With respect to Iran, this president has taken the risk of putting together a negotiation. For the first time in 10 years, the Iranian nuclear program is actually being rolled backwards, and Israel and the region are safer than they were. We've negotiated a ceasefire in an effort to try to bring troops into South Sudan. We've negotiated a disarming of the M23 rebel group in Democratic Republic of the Congo. We're negotiating a major economic treaty, a package trade agreement with Europe, 40% of the world's GDP. Same thing in Asia. I would tell you something, David. One thing I've seen for certain, people aren't worried around the United States and sitting there saying we want the United States to leave. People are worried that the United States might leave. And the fact is that every fundamental issue of conflict today, the United States is in the center, leading and trying to find an effort to make peace where peace is very difficult. And I think the American people ought to be proud of what this president has done in terms of peaceful, diplomatic engagement rather than quick trigger, deploying troops, starting or engaging in a war of choice. I think the president's on the right track, and I think we have the facts to prove it.
So that's quite a defense of the Obama doctrine, a little bit of a swipe there at the previous administration there at the end. But listening to these spokesmen, I mean, it's never been better for the United States. Our position is strong. We're leading in every major conflict or difficulty on earth. But do the facts really back that up, as was brought out in that defense there? The Secretary of State feels like the facts back him up. Even as we look around at this world and see things just breaking down right before our eyes. It was interesting on that same program to hear what one Republican senator had to say in response to that rousing defense of the Obama foreign policy. It was Lindsey Graham who said that Secretary Kerry gave one of the most ridiculous and delusional statements or summaries of American foreign policy. This next comment he said, "It scares me that he believes the world is in such good shape." I mean, that's not an ultra-conservative by any means, but it scares him. And there's an increasing number of people and commentators and just average Americans who are afraid, who are scared at what's happening as they see our southern border dissolved, as they see our position around the world weakening, as they see the astronomical figures that are coming across for the U.S. debt, as they see the breakdown of the family and other foundational institutions. I want to take you through a few scriptures today, 2 Thessalonians 2 to begin with. If you'd like to read along, by all means go and get your Bible and read these verses with me. You know, we have a bit of history with a large organization that broke down, and even as it was beginning to break down, you had the leaders leading the charge out front, saying that things are better than they've ever been, that there aren't any changes or problems to speak of. We're moving on the up and up. We're growing. You can read about that story in this book we'll offer to you at the end, Raising the Ruins. We'll offer this to you free of charge, but for those of us that came out of an organization that was established by Herbert W Armstrong, who died in 1986 over the course of his 50-some-year ministry, I mean, he had an organization that was truly worldwide by the time he died in '86, with over 100,000 members in the organization, hundreds of thousands more that supported the work, called co-workers, some 700 ministers, a Plain Truth magazine that was going out to 8 million subscribers, a World Tomorrow program that was more popular than any religious program at the time. This was a huge worldwide work that impacted millions of people. The world-renowned concert series in Ambassador Auditorium there in Pasadena, California. And yet, when the administration that succeeded him took over, they started making many dramatic changes, and they deceived a lot of people along the way because early on they lied about it. And they said everything's moving along the same as it always has. Changes? What changes? They often said. What are you talking about, you critics? The facts are on our side. We know what we're doing. Just trust us. And many did. This is 2 Thessalonians 2 here. In verse 9, I'll read from the Revised Standard. It says, "The coming of the lawless one by the activity of Satan will be with all power and with pretended signs and wonders." I mean, this is talking about a false leader that came right into the church, who had all these signs and lying wonders, but they weren't motivated by God or His Spirit. His deeds were very deceitful and inspired by the god of this world. Verse 10, here in the King James it says, "And with all deceivableness and unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved." So many of God's people fell away from the truth. We've been going through this series in Revelation 2 and 3 on the 7 church eras. And what was the problem with each of those eras? To the point where they died out and God had to raise up another one. Well, the problem was they fell away from the truth. They stopped loving the truth. They stopped holding fast to the truth. And when that happens, I mean, you lose everything of value. You lose what's important. Your foundation beneath you begins to crumble. That's what we see happening in our nation here. The same thing. As the very foundation of this country is just being chipped away by those who don't agree, who aren't holding on to the truth. Verse 10, or as I read there, continuing to verse 11, it says, "And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie." Now, many people back in the late 80s and early 90s, when they saw this happening, this falling away from the truth there in the Worldwide Church of God, I mean, look, that organization I just described to you that went right around the world, it's non-existent today. All the colleges are gone, the magazine's gone, the TV program's gone, the youth programs, everything. Even the name of the church was changed, and now it's just a mere shell of itself that's rejected everything that it used to believe and teach. As I said, we saw that. We lived through it. And you can see some pretty striking parallels to what's happening in the nation today. Strong delusion. Many people couldn't believe that God would do something like that God would actually test you and see where you stand. What happens if a leader comes along who's not telling you the truth? Can you recognize that? Will you spot it? Will you be able to stand firm? Or will you just go along with what everyone's saying at the top? Most people will. I mean, that's been the lesson that we've observed, having gone through this in the church sense. Most people, sadly, will be led along and deceived. Let me switch back to, again, something that's been in the news. This is put out by the Washington Free Beacon on the so-called security of the southern border.
We have strengthened border security beyond what many believed was possible.
The border is more secure now than it has been ever. Confident that the border is as secure as it's ever been. It is more secure now than it has ever been.
I think it's really important for this panel and the country to know the border is as secure as it's ever been.
Mr. Speaker, our borders are more secure than ever before.
Everyone here, the border is secure.
The border is secure.
I think our border with now 21,000 Border Patrol agents is under control.
Our border is secure, more secure than ever before.
The border today is more secure than it has ever been.
Is the border secure?
Well, I will tell you that there are more resources that are dedicated to this border right now and securing it than there ever have been.
More secure.
As secure.
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 The border is secure.
Now, what's striking about that collage there is, well, for one, just the number of leaders that are echoing those same talking points. But a couple of those comments from Senator Harry Reid, for instance, it was made recently, even as we've seen tens of thousands of people streaming across the border. And the leaders out front in Washington saying everything's fine, don't worry about it. Nothing to see here, just move on. More secure than it's ever been, that's quite an assertion. And the facts tell us that it's more unsecure than ever. If you just look at what's happening, this is something from President John Adams. He said way back in 1770, our second U.S. president, facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictums of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. I mean, we can wish for the border to be secure. We can like the idea of having a secure border. We can pour money at the problem and say, well, okay, we poured money there. It's secure. Everything's taken care of. Or we can actually look at what's happening and say, what do we need to change here? It's not working. You think of Isaiah 3 so often now when you just hear what so many leaders are saying. It's a backward, upside-down society in so many respects, and as Isaiah 3 brings out, I mean, God's just taken away the leaders, the wise counselors. He's taken away the top military men, the generals, and so on. You need to go back and read that prophecy in Isaiah 3 and see what's happening. God said it would happen. None of this should be surprising, not if you're keeping your nose in the Bible. And if you love the truth, you can see what's happening and you can see where this is leading. Here's one that at least has enough sense to realize what's happening to America's standing in the world. This is from the National Journal, July 19th. The slow American withdrawal from world affairs has been apparent for a long time, but has never been so glaringly evident as this week in the Middle East. It says Hamas is at war with Israel. The brutal struggle in Syria frustrates the world. The terrorists of ISIS are making serious progress in Iraq. And now another attempt to deprive Iran of nuclear weapons has so far been thwarted. The United States has a position of sorts in each of these arenas, but it's not powerful in any of them. American influence has faded. The world's governments no longer worry as much as they once did about what Washington wants, partly because Washington doesn't know what it wants. Well, I mean, I would take exception to that. I think a lot of those leaders that just repeatedly say, it's secure, it's secure, it's secure, they do know what they want. They want illegals to stream across the border. There is an agenda at work here. Those that took over the Worldwide Church of God back in 1986, they knew what they wanted. They wanted to undermine everything that church stood for. And they were quite successful looking at it from their standpoint. Continuing on from this quote, it says, U.S. policy has become erratic and half-hearted, subject to arbitrary change without notice. That's the way of the United States today. Let me just take you through a couple more verses over in John chapter 8, the book of John. John 8 and verse 30. I'll just take you to one more recent article. This was from the Daily Mail, July 19th. It says that the Parliament, it's talking about Syria basically, and how the U.S. weakness over the Syrian crisis last summer is basically what cleared the way for Vladimir Putin to go on the offensive in Ukraine. He brings out this very recent history that the parliament of our closest ally, Great Britain, rejected an air campaign, first gave Mr. Obama an additional reason for inactivity. The flailing seemed to end when Russian President Vladimir Putin opened the door to a negotiated deal with Syria. This is again from last summer, but it was not the end, it was the beginning. For as the administration rushed to that door, all over the world, those who depended on America when in harrowing circumstances were asking themselves, how reliable is America now? How strong now? See, they saw America's fecklessness in Syria, in the case of Putin, and he saw, well, here's my open door. This boosted his confidence. He knew that when the U.S. didn't act in Syria, that if he went on the warpath in Ukraine, who would act? Who would stop him? Nobody. And so that's why we see all of these emergences of enemies, of hostilities, growing in power. because there's no world power there to keep it in check. John 8, verse 30, this is Jesus speaking. And as he spoke these words, many believed on him. Switching back to the spiritual now, I mean, look at the teachings of Jesus Christ. He encountered the same thing in his day that we see all over the world today. People who love to believe on Christ, who talk about Christ, who maintain that they're Christian. But what did Christ say about so many of them in his day? I mean, in the first century. Verse 31, then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, if you continue in my word, then are you my disciples indeed. Elsewhere in the Gospels he said, so many come and say, Lord, Lord, but why don't you do what I say? It's not enough just to believe on me. How about believing me? How about acting on what I say? How about holding to the truth? Verse 32, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. I mean, to know, it is knowledge. Go back and read Hosea 4 sometime and see the destruction that comes upon people for lack of knowledge. They don't know what's coming. They don't know how dangerous the times are. They don't know what it means when the border dissolves. They don't know what that means for the nation's security. They don't know what it means when the military's hollowed out. They don't know what it means when we have these astronomical figures of national debt. We know what it means. You can see from God's Word where this is headed. We talk to you often about the United States and Britain in prophecy. You can know where this is headed. You can know the truth. But it's not enough just to receive it, just to hear a message and say, well, right on, I sure like that one. You've got to do something with it. Those that didn't do anything with the truth, back in the days after Mr. Armstrong died, well, they just drifted along. And 10, 15 years later, they woke up in a church that was nothing like the one that they had spent the better part of their lives in. You had to act on it. You had to do something with it. This book, as I said, tells the story of that fascinating history. Free book, hardcover. It tells the story from beginning to end of what happened after one of the most successful, well-known televangelists of the 20th century died in January of 1986. This tells you that fascinating story in riveting detail. Raising the ruins. I mean, it has a hopeful message too, because it shows how that work has been resurrected with just a faithful few who would not let the truth go, who love the truth. That's what you've got to be, a lover of truth. Hold to that truth. You can call the number on your screen there, and our operators will send you out a free copy of this book today. Free of charge, no cost or obligation to you. We want you to have this story. We want you to have it on your shelf. We want you to read it. And going back to what Jesus says here in John 8, if you know the truth will set you free. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on the Trumpet Daily.